Buying a home in the UK right now feels impossible and you're not imagining it. It's not just because houses are generally more expensive now. There are three separate gates standing between you and the housing market. You need a huge deposit, you need a bank actually willing to lend you the money to buy, and you need those monthly payments to be affordable. For normal people with decent jobs, this just doesn't stack up anymore. If you're new here, I'm Johnny with an H, and I've spent over 10 years in investment banking, working on mortgages, commercial real estate and loans. So in this video, I want to explain exactly why this is happening and what you can do about it. Now, I think one of the reasons that people feel so frustrated by this is because you can actually see the difference in your own family. My parents-in-law, for example, bought their house in 1988 for £39,000, and it's not far away from where I'm living right now in Nottingham. They both had normal jobs. My mother-in-law was a district nurse, my father-in-law was a network engineer, and they were a normal working couple with a normal 3-bed house. That same house now had valuations last July of around £220,000. So it's more than a 180k of added value, which is a 5.6x increase. So let me show you the three gates because I think this is the clearest way to understand the whole thing. Let's talk about gate one, which is the deposit, and this is the obvious one. Even for a pretty ordinary first home, the deposit alone could be in the tens of thousands of pounds. And then on top of that, you have all the other costs around the purchase. So your solicitors, your surveys, your moving costs, your furniture, maybe a few repairs, or maybe something the survey throws up that nobody mentioned when you viewed it. So before you even own the thing, there is a massive entry fee. You could also be paying stamp duty too, but I know that's offset if you're a first-time buyer, but not always. And I think the deposit is where a lot of people get a bit fed up because saving for a deposit is often talked about like it's just a discipline issue, so too much avocado in toast. It's not as if everyone who has not bought yet is just wasting money. But yes, some people are obviously bad with money, but for loads of people, the majority of people, that is mainly not what's going on. It's not just a behavior problem, it's a maths problem. The hurdle itself for the deposit is just big. But there's something else, the rent trap. This is where it gets worse. Most first-time buyers are not saving in a vacuum where they're not spending any money, unless they live with their parents, and they might get criticized for that. Because if you're not living with someone for free, then you're having to save whilst paying rent, and that is the trap. The system tells you to have a huge deposit ready, while also taking a big chunk of your income every month before you've even started. So trying to save for a deposit while paying high rent is a bit like trying to fill a bath with the plug out. You can do it, it's just painfully slow. And that bath tap has got to be filling faster than it is draining. And that is why so much old advice sounds so out of touch, especially from politicians. Just save harder. Okay, fine. But if rent, food, bills, commuting, and normal life are already taking most of your pay, and it's only going up, there's only so much extra squeezing you can do to get some savings in. If you take an average income and an average lifestyle, you've got to pay rent, which might be this portion. You've got to pay your normal bills, which might be this portion. You've got everything else for life, which might be this portion. And then on top of that, you might have a car payment, you might have a rainy day fund, and then this little sliver is what you've got to save for your house deposit. And this is why people feel stuck. But let's talk about gate two, which is the bank. Now, this is the bit a lot of people underestimate. Saving the deposit does not mean you can buy a house. It just means that you have earned the right to ask the bank to borrow money. And then the bank decides whether your income is good enough to support that loan. The deposit gets you to the door, but the lender, the bank, actually decides whether you get to go through it. And I've seen this play out in real life. A mate of mine who I used to live with was absolutely brilliant at saving. He was properly disciplined. He always chose the cheap pint at the pub. He didn't go on mad or silly holidays. And he didn't overspend while the rest of us were floating around with barely any savings. And I remember being genuinely impressed that he had saved £80,000 for a house deposit, which at the time felt huge, and it's still huge. And then all of us friends were shocked that he'd managed to save up this money on his own efforts. But the snag was, although he earned commission and bonus, his base salary was not that high. And the bank do not want to always give you full credit for variable income like commission and bonus. They see it as more of a risk versus consistent income. Despite building this massive deposit, he couldn't actually afford to buy a house anywhere he wanted to. And that's the point. The deposit is only the first gate. You can win gate one and still fail on gate two. But even if you make it through gate two, let's talk about gate three. And I think we're getting to the bit that has really changed. This is the monthly payment. For quite a long time in the UK, expensive houses were being supported because of cheap debt and low interest rates. And that was the trick. The full house price looked mad and inflated, but the monthly mortgage payment was just about manageable because the interest was low. So that's what people did for years and years. People stretched to that. And that changes everything because most buyers of houses don't buy it outright and they don't experience it as a full house price. They see it as a monthly payment. That's what actually gets subtracted from your bank account. That's what affects your quality of life. That's what the lender stress tests. And that is what decides whether buying a house feels manageable or whether it feels like you are constantly one bad month away from stress. So even if house prices are not flying up the same way, buying can still feel awful from an affordability point of view. Because if the mortgage is expensive, the house is still expensive in only the way that really matters day to day. And that's the bit that people often miss. But even a slightly cheaper house with a much more expensive mortgage is not some magical fix either. That's still a bad affordability picture. And here's the other thing. A lot of the so-called solutions from the government are not really fixing the problem. They're just finding new ways to let people borrow more money and take on more debt. Higher income multiples. Last I heard they were offering 6 times your salary. And then you could also get low deposit products as well. 5%, maybe even 0% deposits in some cases. And this is simply more leverage dressed up as accessibility. Now on paper, if you look at the numbers, it does sound super helpful. And for some people, yes, it might help them get onto the ladder and get through the door. But it's not making homes genuinely affordable for people. It's just stretching the debt further. And that is fine right up until you remember that wages are not suddenly racing ahead. Rates are no longer in the ultra low world anymore, and borrowing a very high multiple of your salary is a serious amount of leverage. So yes, maybe you do get the house and you get the keys, but you are doing it with more debt, less buffer, and a monthly payment that takes an even bigger bite out of your personal life. So it's not really a proper fix, it's just stretching the elastic further. So I've been thinking about why it feels harder than it used to. And I think this is the bit that people feel in their gut, because it definitely feels harder lately than, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. If we think back a couple of decades, so like my parents-in-law, 1988, homes were generally much closer to what ordinary incomes could support, although rates were fairly high at that point. But then later on, as prices rose and wages didn't rise at the same rate, ultra low mortgage rates softened the blow, so monthly payments didn't shoot up as well. So that period in between didn't make houses cheap, but it did make expensive houses feel more manageable each month. But now, if we look at today, we have the worst combination. Prices are still high relative to wages, but borrowing is no longer cheap, so the monthly payments are high. And rent increasing is making it harder to save in the first place. So there is still a ladder to climb, but it's just been dragged much higher off the ground for you to step onto. But there's also the uncomfortable bit that no one's saying out loud. Family help matters more now. And plenty of people, even people I know, are still buying without family help. But we are seeing more and more people rely on their relatives to get them onto the ladder, whether that's contributing to their deposit or giving them free rent for a while whilst they save. But if one person is paying full market rent and trying to save from scratch, while another gets help with a deposit or can live at home longer, those are not the same starting lines. Effort matters, discipline matters, but starting position matters too. And I think this is one of the reasons that it feels so unfair across the board, because sometimes people are not losing to someone more disciplined. They're just losing to someone who started 20 meters further ahead. Now, I just want to quickly rattle through a few lazy takes that I've heard lately that I do not think survive contact with reality. The first one is that young people just need to save harder. Sometimes people can improve their finances, obviously, but that line on its own is miles too simplistic. But I've also seen people say, if prices fall, then the problem is solved. And I don't think it works that way necessarily. Because if mortgage costs are still high and lenders are still cautious, then affordability can still be poor. I've heard other people say, just buy a wreck and do it up and put value in. And sometimes that does work. I do it with the properties I invest in, but renovation is expensive, risky, stressful. It's not some easy cheat code. I've also heard people talk about low deposit mortgages fixing it. I've talked about this briefly just before. And yes, they can help some people, but they're not removing the income hurdle. You still have to pass the lender. So despite all of this, what can you actually do about it? Now, this is the bit where I don't want to give some fake motivational answer. There's no magic trick here, unfortunately, but there are a few sensible things that you can do. First is work out which gate is actually stopping you from getting your house. For some people it's the deposit, for others it's the bank, and then for others again it's the real problem that if they could buy a house, the monthly payment would be horrendous. And those are 3 individual problems. So don't just assume that the issue is saving for your deposit. Speak to a broker early, run the numbers early and find out what your real bottleneck is, because the solution depends on the constraint. My second constraint is be flexible on the first property you move to. So that might mean a smaller place in a less ideal area, or buying a flat before a house. Just a compromise for a few years, not forever, just for the first step. I know that's not exciting advice and the thing that you want to put on Instagram, but trying to buy your dream house as your first house is often where the maths just snaps. But my third piece of advice is don't destroy your buffer just to say that you've bought. And this is a big one for me, because a lot of people that I speak to are not just trying to buy a house. They're trying to buy a house and still have some breathing room afterwards, because you've got to cope with the repairs, you might need some renovations, and life might just get messy. And owning a house with no buffer at all is not always the win that people think it is. Sometimes in that case, it's just better to rent, because it's just a different kind of stress. So what's my overall verdict? Why can't you afford a home? Well, in my view, it's because buying a home in the UK right now means getting through these 3 hard gates at the same time: the deposit, the bank, and the monthly payment. And all 3 have got tougher over the years. And this is why so many people feel like they are doing sensible things whilst earning decent money, making reasonable choices, and still getting nowhere. It's not just that houses are expensive, it's that the whole path to buying one has become harder at every stage. Saving is harder, borrowing it is harder, and paying for it each month is harder. And that is the real story. Now, I'm not saying that home ownership is dead, because it isn't, and it won't be pretty much ever. People are still buying, some people are still buying well, but I do think we need to be a lot more honest that the old advice, where you just work hard, save up, get on the ladder, it doesn't work as cleanly as it used to. And once you understand that, then I think it actually helps, because you stop blaming yourself for a problem that is just much bigger than you, and it's more of a situation around your country and your government. And by the way, if you are actively trying to make better property decisions, whether that's buying your first place, or you're thinking about your next move, or just trying to understand the numbers better or get into property investing, that's exactly why I built my Circle community. It's not a course and it's not some hypey guru thing. It's an ongoing weekly support membership where people bring real questions, real numbers, real decisions, and I help them think through it properly. So if that sounds useful, the link for that is below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.